We are here as part of the two-day cloud and security conclave being organized by APAC News Network. Today is the second day, and yesterday we had a galaxy of government policy level policymaker leaders around cloud and security, and also large enterprise tech decision makers from enterprises talking on different aspects and challenges in cloud computing deployment and cybersecurity issues across different sectors. So, yesterday, from the government policymakers side, we had the DGNIC, we had the Delhi Police technical head, the Secretary of Panchayati Raj Government of India, IT secretaries of Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Odisha, the ADGP of Kerala Police. We had the Basil CMD. We had the Passport Seva CTO who deliberated on different aspects of cloud and security. We have had 5 to 6 panel discussions ranging from topics like dark web cryptocurrency, cyber threat landscape, cloud challenges, deployment, how PSUs are looking at cloud and security. And just we just finished a session with the tech decision makers from the pharma companies. So this session we are focusing on primarily companies who are related to the manufacturing vertical, and for the manufacturing sector, how to develop an endpoint to cloud security strategy. That is where the focus area. So it's my privilege to introduce the panelists here. We have with us Sarajit Jha. He's a Chief Business Transformation and Digital Solutions from Tata Steel. Welcome to the discussion, Sarajit. We have with us Ricardo
Yeah,
Ferreira. He is a Field CISO for the EMEA region for Fortinet. Welcome, Ricardo.
thank you.
We have with us Mr. Heramba Naik. He is the Senior General Manager, ICT and CIO and CISO of Krosaki Refractories Limited. Welcome to the discussion, Heramba.
Thank
We
you.
have with us Abhay Bapna. He is the AVP-IT of Adani Wilmar. Welcome to the discussion, Abhay. We have with us Shobhana Lele. She is the CIO of Bombay. Welcome, Shobhana. We have with us Sanjay Gharde. He is the Group CIO of ISGEC Heavy Engineering. And as we start the panel discussion, we'll be joined by Hitesh Mulani of Mahindra Rise, RN Mohanty of Pidilite, and by Rajeev Khade of Sigma Electric. So, my first question, and I'll start with Sarajit. Uh, what, from a manufacturing organization perspective, are the typical innovations around security that you are currently witnessing, and what are the bottlenecks in deploying some of those innovations?
Thanks, Rajneesh. That's a fairly pertinent question, and I can't say that we have all the answers. But largely, the question, what is happening is that manufacturing concerns are realizing that there is an IT network which is primarily run for confidentiality, integrity, and availability in that order. And there is an OT network which is run for availability, integrity, and confidentiality in that order. OT security is a must. The other thing is that if you have to have operational technology security, then you need to ring fence it, and you need to make sure that your OT network does not talk to the business network except from a DMZ, which is a demilitarized zone. And the IT network then talks to the world through a single DMZ zone. But that architecture, once work from home started, does not work so easily. So you need to have a distributed architecture that supports work from home. And once you do that on the business network, your most vulnerable point actually becomes, say, my home network, which is actually the most vulnerable point. So then you need to make sure that you have a zero trust environment, because if you don't have a zero trust environment, somebody who has access to my network can actually get in It's not very difficult in today's world to get credentials. So authorization, authentication, and access control have to have happen dynamically on in a zero trust environment. So I think that's so the first thing is the way the OT and the IT networks need to be segregated, the way you commission the demilitarized zones. How do you make sure that you have authorization, authentication, access control in near real time or real time, irrespective of the weak points? And along with it is a lot of education that is needed, because I don't think cybersecurity is a matter of the IT department or the CISO. It is really a business matter, because today, with the advanced persistent threats, the attacks that we are seeing, the dark web that you were talking about, this has gone to a whole new level. And I'll just make one point before I hand it back to you. Is when you're talking about innovations, I think the innovation that I'm very excited about is to start thinking of this whole thing beyond the cloud, the edge, and the fog, which are very confusing terms that I'm sure none of us will agree what the definitions of each are. And to just say that data needs to be secured, there should be a distributed architecture computing which has humans and computers in it together, because there's a lot of, like, we are soft computing power which has consciousness and intelligence, and then there's hard computing that does not have any consciousness but only intelligence. Consciousness, mind you, can be good or bad. So a computer is never a bad faith actor. It's almost always a human that is linked to a computer that makes it a bad faith actor or a good faith actor. So I think understanding some of these fundamentals is a very exciting space, and I hand it back to you, Rajneesh. Thank you.
Right. Thanks. I'll take up the IT/OT issue later. I'll come to Abhay now. One very pertinent issue that was raised by Sarajit also is, we know the way the world and India also has been working in the last 1.5 years during the pandemic, with primarily a large part of the workforce working from home or increasingly working from anywhere concept. So what that means is, from a cybersecurity aspect, a lot of heterogeneous devices and networks have come into the enterprise official network of the system. So, as a tech decision maker, and particularly from a large manufacturing organization, what has been the challenges that you have faced with this work from home workforce, bringing in a lot of heterogeneous devices into the system?
Uh, so we are basically a manufacturing company. So the challenge for our company was different during last 18 months. So what during this time, what was our focus was more on OT security, which was the key component. And many people started working from home. So that's where we also focused on some of the basic things at the place. So one was zero trust, MFA, patch upgrades, because everybody is working from home, and that was one challenge which we faced. So that was another point with you. But another area where we focus basically from the point of view of edge computing or IoT devices which we had in the system. So we implemented IoT device, and we realized initially that there are challenges in the terms of OEM manufacturing machines which we have in the plant, which are 8-10 years old or more than that. The new so patch upgrade at OEM level was also a biggest challenge, and that's when initially we realized that there is, unless we upgrade the patch, the challenge was different. So we had to focus and talk to all our key OEM suppliers to upgrade the patches so that that component is there. And now we move to the next second layer of security challenges, which was more to do with the operational data, which are it was from point of view of predictive maintenance, utilities, operation efficiency, or tough turnaround. There we ensure that we are not part of IT network. Separate edge computing devices were used to collect the data so that that conflict between IT and OT is minimized. And to ensure that, because during the last 18 months the challenge was your machine should run at the downtime reduction was the key focus area. So we focus on that and then to the analytics component of it.
Thanks, Abhay. I'll put a similar question to Shobhana also now. In terms of the large part of the workforce moving to a work from home environment, what has been the challenges that you have faced and how you looked at resolving that?
Yeah, thanks, and really glad to be part of this very nice panel. So, I think, much like all the other panelists mentioned, I think all of us were faced with the sudden scenario of a work from home. Although we always had employees who were working from home, I think this was the first time that the entire set of employees were actually working from home. So I think the cloud technology to a large extent helped us because we had most of our critical applications for the business and the entire staff available on the cloud. So that really helped us to get the business started almost immediately as soon as the lockdown was announced. So there was no hitch to that. But I think where we saw our lessons coming in, where something like a simple thing like a VPN, which normally would not take the entire load of the entire set of employees coming on the VPN at a single time, right? So these are the few things that we did some quick around workarounds and managed to get the users on board immediately. From the manufacturing perspective, I think the initial phases of the lockdown, we were actually having the factory to closed because of the lockdown restrictions. Only the essential factories were allowed to operate. So we were at a time where the non-essential items were not really allowed to operate. So I think we used up that time to have some of the downtimes and other critical maintenance jobs, which were otherwise not possible during the productivity hours. So that's how it happened. And from the work from home scenario, we ensured that any employee who's actually coming into our systems are coming in through secure channels and using the aspects of two-factor authentication and ensuring the borderless or perimeterless security that was possible at that time. I think you're on mute, Rajneesh.
Yeah, thanks, Shobhana. The next, I'll put the question to Sanjay. Uh, Typically, this IoT deployment and many of these IoT deployments fail owing to there is a mismatch between the IT part and the OT part. From the OT security part, for a manufacturing organization, what are the typical initiatives that you have undertaken to maintain the OT security part?
Thank you, Rajneesh, and the good afternoon to all the panelists. We yes, this the during definitely before the pandemics, as Mr. Chai has already said, that we were actually separating these two networks, keeping them on the putting the OT systems on the PMZ and the my IT systems on actually talking to the OT systems until unless there are some the communications are required. So those kinds of the setups were there. But during the pandemic, yes, lots of the innovative ideas has to be brought in because the moment we realized that no, we can't work during the pandemic and we need to really we shut down the machines and whenever we are going to start it, some of the business has to work. On the OT side, yes, we need to always ensure that uh, these solutions are more secure because if these solutions are getting breached and some I would say the attacks are there, probably those can be more the harmful than the even the my IT networks are the getting the attacked or the compromised. So in that case, what we have ensured that the yes, there is the very minimal the communication whatever is required, and we've ensured that the all kind of the informations are the getting screened before it has been shared. So we deployed the technologies where the OT and IT when they are the shaking hands, they are happening on the secure channel. So all those things have been taken care, and still we are the evolving on those ideas that how the now the everyone has realized that yes, these two networks, in spite of their we kept them on the segregated kind of environment. Still, they need to talk to each other. So we are still the evaluating the some more the technologies how to make more secure, and so that if the one the part of set of the say IT or OT wherever it is got the compromised, we are not allowing those kind of the breaches to the percolate to the different system. So that's the strategy at this point of time in the check.
Thanks. Heramba, I'll come to you. A similar question, but in terms of there is this increasingly concept of smart factory or smart manufacturing. So, in a smart factory or smart manufacturing context, what are the cybersecurity challenges, and how, as an organization, you are looking at mitigating those challenges?
Yeah, thanks, Rajneesh. So there are many areas of implementation of digital manufacturing, smart factory, as well as service optimization solutions. Like point number one is digital workforce productivity, which can empower manufacturing workforces with actionable augmented intelligence to improve productivity and quality, while avoiding safety and compliance risk using digital manufacturing work instructions, augmented expert guidance, and remote assistance. Number two, intelligent asset optimization, which can enable real-time monitoring, diagnostics, predictive and prescriptive analytics to avoid any unplanned downtime while maximizing the asset utilizations. Then operational intelligence in terms of providing real-time manufacturing insights and performance monitoring to reduce the manufacturing costs and increasing flexibility, agility. Fourth is I would be talking about the scalable production management, which will enable effective planning and control, and improving the production processes to reduce cost of inventory, improving quality, and accelerate time to market. Next is the service visibility, combining IT and OT data for situational analysis and providing condition-based service alarms and alerts. And the maximum utilization of augmented reality platforms to conduct remote diagnostics or virtual inspection of different products in the COVID-like situations, and interaction with the assets to resolve problems without the high cost of sending technicians using platforms. So these are the different use cases which are covered under the digital manufacturing and smart factory solutions. However, when we deploy all these solutions, there is a convergence which takes place between IT and OT. And when there is a convergence between IT and OT which is taking place, we need to ensure that the cybersecurity is properly taken care of to ensure that the business continues up and running, and to see that at any point in time we can maximize the utilization of the OT infrastructure and IT infrastructure along with the cybersecurity ecosystems in a productive manner. So that is how this IT and OT infrastructure need to be managed along with the cybersecurity requirements.
Thanks. Now I'll come to you, Ricardo. Now you heard most of the enterprise users talking about the challenges and the different aspects, and more so pertinently in what has happened over the last 1.5 years, the challenges has got amplified. So now, from a security vendor perspective like Fortinet, how would you enable or help some of these enterprises mitigate some of these cybersecurity challenges? What will be the solutions that you will prescribe?
Thank you so much, Rajneesh. So before I jump into the part of the vendor solutions, I would also like to bring a bit of statistics from FortiGuard Labs and also from the industry. So this year, there was a survey that with a sample size of almost 500 responses that touched on the OT and the ICS landscape. And they found out that almost approximately half has been increasing their security budgets, as we have been seeing also from the rest of the panelists. The threat is there, and there's a bit more money being spent in order to protect that. The other interesting part was that the ransomware, cybercrime, and now more sophisticated threats such as sponsored state attacks are also on the mind of those organizations. But more importantly is that half of those respondents also said that they use a vendor-provided threat intelligence feed. And we'll get to that later. And that's important because when we have the cloud, and the cloud also per this report is playing a bigger role in IT environments, because 2 years ago cloud wasn't even seen in this environment, and now it seems that 40% of the respondents are saying that they use some form of cloud-based systems for OT and ICS systems. And more than 90 are using cloud technology for remote monitoring, configuration, and analysis. Right? And this is, for me, is amazing, because I was also hearing from you that the same challenges are real. So from a security perspective, I heard the best practices already, which is the first step is all about identifying those assets. Where are those assets distributed? And how critical are they? The second step is about segmenting those networks, right? Because if one network, OT network, IT network gets breached, we want to stop the horizontal scaling, the horizontal breaches, right? So that's also an important part of having that segmentation and building that iron dome around our OT systems. And more importantly, and I think that also speaks to the report, is that threat intelligence. Right? Having a threat intelligence that integrates with the organization systems and make sure that it is actionable. So protecting against threats that the organization still hasn't seen, but actually some vendor has provided those signatures and that threat intelligence so that the organizations can become more secure. So just to summarize, I think the topics like zero trust in order to protect the perimeterless, identifying assets, segmenting the network, and making sure that there's a threat intelligence associated with it is the way forward for organizations to protect their OT systems.
Thanks, Ricardo. In fact, Abhay mentions about the need for a niche security expert to support the organizations. I'll come to you, Abhay, on this question, basically on the need of the skilled resources with relevant. First, I'll come to Sarajit. One is this is more a business aspect of the question. Lot of the security innovations and being dynamic in these current times, they need there is a budgetary challenge for that. So as the tech decision maker for a large enterprise, manufacturing enterprise, how is it sort of this budgetary constraint met because the need for cybersecurity is more dynamic and it's growing. So how do you sort of manage the both?
I think first is that the COVID scare and work from home and the cybersecurity has become a board topic in most organizations. So you have directors, independent directors, fortunately, and of course, in our case, chairman leading was the CEO of a leading tech company before he joined. So I don't think we have much to educate him on cybersecurity and the need for it. The question comes up is how much do you invest? Because no amount of money is enough. If a board typically asks a question, how much money do you need and what would we be 100% secure? Because that's the typical question a board is used to. and your answer is, I need XX million dollars, but I can't guarantee 100% security. So that becomes a very interesting conversation. What helps is to be upfront and clearly say, as Ricardo was in a way alluding to, that there is word on the street, cybersecurity is increasing, other companies are increasing to invest, there are advanced persistent threats, and uh, there is different nature is increasing as we are going more digital. It's important to kind of explain to the board that your surface area actually increases as you become more and more digital. More digital tools, AI, ML, AR, VR you put in, the number of ports, the number of different types of ports, nature of the ports, checkpoints just keeps going up. The third thing that, in my view, helps is to make a business case for cybersecurity, which is to say that, look, every organization, uh, there are only two kinds of organizations, those that have been breached and those that don't know that they have been breached. In this race between the cops and the robbers will always be ahead. All the cops can do is to keep fortifying and having, you know, uh, ability to knock some of the zero-day threats. And it needs investments because the security is investing. So, three things, in my view, have helped. Uh, Partnering with the chief risk officer to put this as part of the risk framework in the organization, which means then the audit committee of the board and everybody and the audit committee has an oversight. Committing to a roadmap of what will happen by when, because it's not like a tap, you just don't close it one day or open it the other day. It's actually a journey, and it's a very unpredictable journey, but your actions need to be predictable, and they need to be necessary and sufficient. Third thing that helps is to meet the implementation commitments that one has made, because often cybersecurity is some of the budget that's very hotly asked for, and I'm sure everybody has had the experience that at the end of the day you could not spend it because you either could not close the RFPs, or we got completely confused, or the vendors came in and gave such a speech that you said, let me focus on getting my infra right or doing some more applications, we'll come to this when the time comes. So the provider environment is not very, you always work on greed and fear, but sometimes too much of fear is not really good for the for any decision making. Over to you, Rajneesh.
Thanks. I'll come back to Ricardo on this, the vendor and enterprise relation. Now, Abhay, I'll come to you. The point you raised about uh, people with relevant skill sets in security and niche experts who are required, especially in this dynamic environment. So, what is your experience here, and how are things changing?
The key component here is like when you say that digitization and automation at different place at the plant, and you try to adopt many new technology, the increase of risk increases from mobility to IoT to operational efficiency or some other areas where you, because what you are trying to do is build a connected network within a plant from the one machine to different machines. So the risk is increasing. Therefore, what we found is wherever we are expert, we do it internally, but rest we are taking help of an external experts who are who guides us, monitors from and defines the policy which are practical to implement, and that's how we are working right now on this.
Okay, thanks. Heramba, the other important point here is we heard about many of the organizations are undergoing some sort of digital transformation. A lot of the business is moving in a digital manner, especially the pandemic has further accelerated it. A lot of applications are on cloud. Then different technologies like augmented reality, virtual reality, or more analytics are being used. Now, typically, even from the tech infrastructure, an organization will have maybe a chief information officer looking at the IT and the infrastructure aspect, a digital officer maybe now increasingly looking at some of these digital transformation aspects, then CISO looking after the security aspect. So how is that coordination within the, whereas in most cases the core business of that organization is not technology, but how is the coordination between these different entities managed, and is it a challenge to manage this relation?
Yeah, so definitely it is a challenge, but it creates an opportunity to address those challenges. And at this point in time, I would say creating an ecosystem of IT, digital, and cybersecurity is the need of the hour. The investments in cybersecurity must be made in line with the IT and digital transformation that organizations are going through, because it is inevitable. So the building of a OT infrastructure is rapidly growing in all organizations. And the responsibility and the accountability of the chief information security officer in the organizations are increasing day by day to make the organization safer and secure, with a challenging target of plus 365 security incident free days. Because every organization would like to be completely safe and secure, which may not be guaranteed, but this is the responsibility of the CISO to ensure. So the role of CISO is getting further widened because there is a convergence of IT and OT infrastructure which is taking place due to the Industry 4.0 initiatives. So CISO need to work in close coordination with CIO to accelerate the digital transformation, having robust cybersecurity systems for business continuity and sustainability. As Sarajit ji has told that this has become a business a board agenda, and there are reviews which is happening at different levels. So when we are trying to make our company a digital company, and at the same time, on the other end, there are security challenges that is growing day by day. So you need to strike the balance between the IT, digital infrastructure, and the cybersecurity ecosystems, which can help the organization to grow, to become sustainable, and we can ensure the business continuity. So what I'm trying to say is that there has to be a, like the convergence between IT and OT which is taking place, there has to be a convergence between the CIO and CISO, which need to happen at any point in time in the present digital era.
Thanks. Thanks. I'll bring in Rajiv for the first time in today's panel. Rajiv, one area we had talked earlier, that the IT and OT, there is often a mismatch, and we talked about OT security. So, from a manufacturing perspective, people who are looking at an IoT deployment, uh, what are in your experience, are the cybersecurity related challenges in IoT deployment for manufacturing organizations?
Yes, thank you so much, Rajneesh, and good afternoon, everyone. Please excuse me for joining late. And setting the context, Rajneesh, you have done a very good thing. The topic is very relevant in today's circumstances, as in the manufacturing sector, we find that more and more devices are getting attached and connected to the internet. Earlier, it was not the situation. Only our data center equipments, or for that matter, the laptops, or at the most the cell phone devices were getting connected to the internet. But now, as the organizations are adopting more and more technology-related things, the IoT devices, wherein a lot many devices are getting connected to internet, and the data fetching is getting more and more prevalent. So what is important is that how do we secure these various equipments, devices on the shop floor? So that is very, very important. Very utmost care needs to be taken as to how secured our devices are there. Are we protecting these devices from the endpoint perspective? Because as I understand, security is a never-ending topic, and the more you do on the security, it's always the less that we do it. So, on the security perspective, as you know, that each and every device needs to be secured in its own way. We cannot leave any single device, because if that particular device is vulnerable, then it will lead to a chaos in the organization. So when the devices are getting more and more connected, it is the responsibility of the IT people, in which they should ensure that the devices are connected in a secure manner. Devices have the right amount of operating system with the latest patches and the latest antivirus requirements, and they are more secure. To bring in more clarity into this, earlier we had a concept of connecting all these devices to the central switch, and that switch is connected to the central server or the router and to the gateway, etc. But now in the concept wherein the IT and OT environment is separated from each other. What I mean to say is that whenever a device is connected to the central server, it will be pushing lot amount of data to the switches. And if all the devices are connected to a one single switch, then it will lead to collision, and it will lead to lot amount of traffic on the internal switch and other environment. So the concept nowadays is how we can separate this IT and OT environment. Can we differentiate between IT and OT environment? Yes, that is possible, wherein the IT, the enterprise environment is separated from the OT environment. So the risk is also minimized from the external threats perspective. So if at all any external attack is there, then the risk is minimized to certain few equipments itself. Not all the devices are open to the external world. So according to me, it is very important to segregate this environment, the IT environment, the OT environment, thereby reducing the risk with the external environment. And also the additional amount of protection is also there by segregating these devices. So these are my primary views on the IT and OT environment. What do you?
Thank you. Thank you. That's interesting. Shobna, the point I'd come to you now is what about technologies like blockchain and those in terms of cybersecurity context? How has it been helpful or has it been helpful at all? And what is your experience there?
Right. I think from a technology perspective, there are so many technologies that are coming in that every organization needs to really assess what is relevant for that specific organization, and then use adopt those technologies. Right. So you have a host of technologies like AI, ML, RPA, IoT, and then coming to blockchain, cloud. There's so many things that are happening suddenly in the span of a few years that I think organizations will take a little time, particularly the traditional organizations will take a little time to really come to a stage of going big in terms of the blockchain, etc. So that being said, like at least there is a lot of awareness and there is a lot of enthusiasm at this time to look and evaluate new technologies and how it can help the manufacturing organizations to actually utilize and use it for increasing their productivity. So, although blockchain specifically as a topic at this time is not on cards, but definitely new technologies which are helping like AI, ML, RPA, IoT, etc., are definitely on the cards, and I think it will be just a question of time when we will get into a phase where blockchain and other kinds of technologies will also be adopted seamlessly. The issue is within the manufacturing organizations which are very capex heavy, you have to ensure that the entire ecosystem is actually prepared for this kind of a change. Because these are capex heavy organizations, so there is a lot of investments that are already done in the traditional machineries, which may not always be completely feasible with the new technologies, right, or compatible with the new technologies. So at some point we'll have to arrive at a base where the new investments that are being done and in the manufacturing sector by the organizations, as well as the new technologies that are coming in, there is a good amount of cohesion between the two, and then the organizations actually use that to adopt it to their businesses.
Thanks. That was very comprehensive. Sanjay, my question to you is typically about some of these newer technologies. One technology, and what Shobna also mentioned, typically manufacturing organizations are very capex heavy. And since you come from heavy engineering, which is a more core infrastructure kind of industry, is the usage of robotics or robot process automation kind of thing increasingly becoming mainstream and within economic feasibility as well as technology feasibility? What do you see as the possibilities there? You are on mute.
I'm sorry. Robotics, in terms of the our kind of industry, is still very new, and typically now the as Shobhana is saying that there are lots of technologies where the IoT or taking the OT system on the cloud and doing the say the predictive servicing and the predictive analysis on the service side so that my machine the availability is the improved. Those kind of the technologies which were the pre-pandemic were not really the people were investing. These days the people are more thinking to go on the AI ML or the IoT along with the industry 4.0 so that we can really get the benefit out of it. And the people are still in the heavy engineering where these are the capex intensive industries and the lots of investment has done on in the past. So the definitely the getting the those kind of budgets for robotics or actually selling those kind of concept to the robotics is the at this point of time as per me is a the big challenge. But yes, these things like we need to really go on the cloud and we need to adopt the different strategies. Like previously it was everything was happening in the within the premise and there was no the data was moving from OT systems to the other systems and it was analyzed within the system. Now at least the people are able to understand that why this data can required to be on the say cloud or some other say private cloud wherever we want to do the analysis, but at least outside the OT network. Robotics, in my view, on the heavy engineering side kind of industry, still the far away. The it may be happening in the very advanced countries. In India, I don't foresee in next 3 4 years that the trend is catching up.
Okay, okay. Thanks. Sarajit, I'll come back to you. Especially post-pandemic situation, this has got more accelerated, is a migration towards cloud. So typically today in a scenario, what we will see will be an organization managing applications in multiple clouds. There will be some applications on maybe on a public cloud platform, there's yours or AWS's. There will be certain applications on more a private cloud. Then there will be multiple cloud providers. Some applications might be on the edge also. And then there typically would be some software like a Nutanix or something which is managing those multi cloud environments. So this managing this multi-cloud scenario, how much cybersecurity challenge does it pose? And as the technology decision maker, how do you meet those security challenges while managing multiple clouds?
That's I mean, nothing happens till it does happen, right? So, fingers crossed. About 3 years ago, we took a decision to be a cloud first company, and we said that the cloud is safer. So the cloud is scalable, uh, is agile, flexible, efficient, and relatively cheaper. So, and we came up with this acronym saying the cloud is safer. It has also got better security. So obviously, the Google, the Amazons, and the Microsoft of the world invest more in security, repel more attacks, have more understanding of security than a company like Tata Steel ever could. So fundamentally, the movement to the cloud doesn't make you any less or more secure. It's just a different security architecture. The two or three things that you must have uh, is that when you're running the cloud, you need to not run it in the principles that you were running on-prem. Since it took you 9 to 12 months to get on-prem infrastructure, our main business case for the cloud was driven by the months to minutes program, where we are today able to commission VMs and spin them off, including hardening in less than 15 to 18 minutes. In fact, when I went from when we migrated to the cloud, I remember I was at the Ranchi airport and testing this out randomly with the vendor, saying if I, the least uh, IT savvy guy in the IT department, is able to spin a VM in West Coast from a Ranchi connection on my mobile, and anybody would be able to do it. So I think that hypothesis has been found to be true. So there is an agility on the cloud. In terms of the tools, I think you need a cloud access service broker when you have a multiple cloud. A CISB, it can be provided by anyone, but you need one. The other is importantly, how do you do port management, and how do you do ensure that your APIs are all in one place? For example, we as a company use Google as where all our APIs are. So the APG is the tool we use, which is quite famous. There are other tools again as well. I'm not recommending one or the other. I'm just saying that all the APIs have to be managed, and how do you measure, manage, monetize, and publish APIs becomes very important. And lastly, moving to the cloud cannot be without a microservices architecture. So what people have done, including us, is what I call we have done cloudification or cloud wash. We have taken all our loads on-prem and just moved them lock, stock, and barrel to the cloud. At that time, it was necessary. It's given us a lot of advantages. Now we are going into the second mode of development where AI SecOps, as it's called, that anything in the cloud should be driven by AI. Humans are too slow. Security has to be inbuilt into the program. That cannot be an afterthought. And your operations need to move beyond DevSecOps in a cloud native environment. And all your older generation applications, we're formulating a plan of what we call we have a brick strategy of we kind of contain, retire what's not working, contain what we don't want to grow, mainstream what is the fundamental tools, and finally we keep experimenting on new stuff. And lastly, to end this point, uh, I believe that ultimately SaaS will eat up all of this IS and PaaS. So I put it as no offense meant to anyone, but SaaS को पास लाओ तो IS का जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगा.
That's a very great one. Okay, Ricardo, you have heard again, and I'll come back to two questions, especially in the post-pandemic times. One, for many of the enterprises, the pattern of workloads itself has changed because of this work from home, work from anywhere environment. So, in this changing pattern of workloads, and how, as a security vendor, you are maintaining your relation with these enterprises, how has the impact been on the existing SLAs with between say solution provider like Fortinet and the enterprises, and what have been the fundamental changes in those SLAs, especially with respect to the changing pattern of workloads?
Sure, that's a very good question. But before I go there, I would just like to touch on what Sarajit was saying because it was very important. So regarding the vendors, and obviously there's a bit of FUD in order to try to push fear, but one good metric that the organizations can also have is actually identify those critical assets, have something like a rosy return on security investment. Let's say that we have a critical process or business function that generates 1 million, right? If the security investment to protect that and the probability of having something catastrophic to happen is very high, then maybe making investment in a certain product may be a good thing. Obviously, that depends and it requires an analysis. But the thing is, I completely agree that a business case is necessary, and also understanding the impact and the investment that security program product will bring to the organization. Then I was hearing also Sanjay, which also relates to what Sarajit was saying regarding Industry 4.0 and the cloud, right? Because I believe that an organization, in order to be more agile, in order to be more Industry 4.0, also needs to adapt those paradigms that Sarajit was just discussing, which is the APIs and microservices. Why? because if the organizations become modular, they will have this small pockets that can be arranged for more efficiency. And we have seen during the pandemic that the organizations that were able to create those services use APIs internally when the pandemic, after the pandemic, which has already started, they were able to then open those APIs to external organizations and start building products. So more efficient, they became more agile. So those tenets of creating organizations that are modular based on the principles of APIs and microservices is super important. So to your point regarding the pandemic and how it shifted the workloads, I think what we've seen as a security vendor was that obviously a lot of the workforce started to work from home. There was more VPNs, and we also had to support that. From an SLA perspective, obviously Fortinet has the SLAs on with the external partners on managed services and so on. But what I would like to say as well is that sometimes it's not just about the technology and using a VPN and having an SLA on that. Sometimes you also need to embed those best practices within the organization. And that means changing the processes, changing how people actually also use that technology. So I think it's a bigger piece than that.
Thank you. Thank you. So, before we conclude, just like to go to each of the panelists and very briefly, 30 seconds to each panelist. One initiative in your cybersecurity roadmap which you are likely to follow. We'll start with Abhay. Abhay's camera is switched off. Then I'll just start with Heramba. 30 seconds. What will be the cybersecurity initiative which is on your roadmap? You are on
Hi.
mute.
Right. So one of the important point at this juncture is to migrate the security operation centers to a next generation cyber security centers, that is popularly known as cyber fusion centers. So that is in my roadmap to migrate from security operation center to CFC.
Thanks. Rajeev, what will be on your roadmap?
Currently, the cyber security monitoring is done by the manual intervention of the IT infrastructure team. So, on the roadmap, the next item or agenda point is to move to an automated detection system and response system, so that the mitigation and other related tasks will become much more easier.
Sanjay.
What we have done is the in the my organization, yes, IT security was managed till now by the IT infrastructure team. Now we have the specifically push this towards to management, that we should have the CISO who will be able to manage the security program in the organization. And what we thought that the lots of equipments on the security side which we have already deployed, like the MDM, PLP, data classification, and everything. But monitoring of those things, as of the strategy, we are taking to the outsourcing to some experts, so that the one person who will be able to probably manage it, and keeping the outsource model. Definitely, this may not be a suitable model. After some time, as a thought process, we may have the permanent position available. So today, program management we trying to outsource, and the monitoring we want to give it to the experts, so that we get the crystal clear approach and views available. So that's our thought is.
Thanks. Abhay, what will be your one cybersecurity initiative?
Yeah, so the first and foremost thing which we are now looking at, security first is the first objective. So any application, anything which we do is that's the first thing which we have to consider. Second is awareness to the internal team, and third is to take expert help wherever it is.
Thanks. Shobhana?
Yeah, I think the first would be to ensure that our infrastructure and applications are both audited at very periodic intervals with all the recommendations coming in and applied, because these things keep changing over the period of time, and we need to ensure that the infrastructure and applications are both, at a state that to handle the security breaches. The second would be to create awareness, because the weakest link in the organization could lead to a disaster, right? So awareness would be the second, right? And the third is how we can still do a little more proactive monitoring, using the maybe a new set of tools that will help us to centrally understand and monitor the entire set of cyber security portfolio that we need to do.
Thanks. Sarajit?
AI SecOps and global unified governance. Those would be the two main things we achieve.
Okay. Now, Ricardo, you have literally the last word. You heard, and this might be beneficial for Fortinet also. You heard what's on the agenda for everyone. So, as a security vendor, how can you support the enterprises? What are the immediate plans on your roadmap?
Sure. So all the activities that I heard are perfectly spot on. I would say that awareness is super important to bring the people aspect. Also start to identify those assets, rank them in terms of criticality, then segment your networks, and obviously analyze the traffic and complement that with threat intelligence. From a vendor perspective, what Fortinet has is like the security fabric, which is built on three tenets: the broad, integrated, and automated. What it means is that we have a broad portfolio that covers the entire spectrum, and that allows teams to have visibility. Then the integration, we have our own FortiGuard labs, which provides threat intelligence, and we have a huge amount of vendor plugins, and we speak APIs with them. So if you have vendors from X, Y, whatever, we integrate nicely, and that's important. And finally, because we all know that the cloud paradigm is all about being reactive and proactive, but also reacting to those events, and also being automated, like DevOps, DevSecOps. So the Fortinet security fabric functions on those three pillars, which is broad to gain visibility, integrated in order to have that reduce the complexity, and also the automation in order to reduce the overhead and become more proactive. So that's how Fortinet can support the organizations on their journey to their digitalization.
Thanks. We heard from all the panelists and touched upon some important aspects of security, especially in a post-pandemic world. We heard about the IT and OT integration, about the OT security level. We talked about the multi-cloud scenario. We talked about the containerization of applications. We heard about the budgetary constraints. We heard about the need of skilled security experts for capex heavy manufacturing organizations, shifting towards some of the technologies we have heard. I'm sure even for the 200 plus audience who are watching this, some of the best practices from here they can apply in their organizations, and that can also prove to be useful. I would once again like to thank all the panelists and wish you have a good day, and maybe the festive season is around. So, wishing you all the best and a happy festive season. And thanks again for a great, insightful panel discussion. Thank you.
Same to you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very
Thank
much,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.